The helicopter's rotors were still chopping the air when I jumped down onto the frozen ground. My bag landed with a hard thud on the icy dirt, the sound echoing against the mountains. Northern Alaska in October wasn't just cold. It was the kind of cold that made your teeth hurt and your fingers sting, even through gloves. I picked up my gear and jogged away from the chopper, lowering my head against the blast of wind it was throwing around. The pilot gave me a quick thumbs up through the glass, and then the helicopter lifted away, leaving me standing in front of what would be my home for the next 6 months. The outpost looked exactly like the photos from the briefing, just a cluster of prefab buildings inside a 12-foot chain-link fence lined with razor wire. Tall radio towers rose into the gray sky, their red lights blinking steadily. Outside the fence, there was nothing but wild land stretching for hundreds of miles. Thick forest crowded in from every side, dark spruce and pine that looked as if they had been there since forever. Thompson. I turned to see a man coming toward me from the main building. He was tall, straight-backed, with a face worn by weather, so it was impossible to guess his age. His uniform was neat despite the wind tugging at it. The name tape read, Samuels. Yes, Sergeant. I stood straighter, tightening my hold on my duffel bag. Welcome to the end of nowhere. He didn't smile. Follow me. We walked across the compound in silence. I counted 4 main structures: the barracks, the command center, an equipment shed, and what had to be a mess hall. Everything was plain and functional. Gray metal siding, small windows, heavy doors built to keep the cold out. A few soldiers moved between the buildings, but not many. The briefing had said there would be just a skeleton crew of 12. Samuels took me into the command building and down a narrow hall that led to a small office. The walls were covered in maps showing the ground around us, radio charts, and weather records. He sat down behind a plain desk and opened a drawer. Before you get settled, there's something you need to see. He pulled out a sheet of paper. It wasn't official military stationery, just a normal page with writing on it. He pushed it across the desk toward me. I picked it up and read the title, Rules for Guard Duty and General Conduct. 1. Do not answer voices calling from outside the fence after dark, no matter who they say they are. 2. Do not let anyone enter the fence if they come on foot. No exceptions. 3. If you see a dog that talks, do not respond. Keep doing your job. 4. Lock your door before midnight. Do not open it for any reason until morning. 5. If you hear screams in the night, do not go looking. Call for backup on the radio and stay at your post. I read the list twice, then looked at Samuels. His face hadn't changed at all, still flat and unreadable. Is this some kind of initiation? I asked. Those are the rules for this outpost. Come on, Sarge. Talking dogs, voices in the dark. I set the paper back down on the desk. Look, I get it. New guy shows up. You want to haze him a little. Fine. Pick up the paper, Thompson. His voice was sharper now. Not mad exactly, but there was a harder tone in it. I picked it up again. You will memorize those rules. You will follow them. No exceptions, no questions. Is that clear? Yeah, but is that clear, soldier? I folded the sheet and put it in my pocket. Yes, Sergeant. Good. Martinez will show you to your room. You've got the midnight shift on Tower 2 tonight. Get some sleep. He turned back to his paperwork, clearly finished with me. I waited a second, hoping for even a small smile, a sign this was just a joke. Nothing. Jose Martinez ended up being a thin guy about my age, tired eyes and a small cross chain at his collar. He helped carry my stuff to the barracks, a long, narrow building split into single rooms. "This is you," he said, opening a door near the end of the hall. Not much, but private. The room was about 8 by 10 feet. Single bed, foot locker, a little desk, and a tiny closet. A narrow window looked out at the fence and the dark trees beyond. "Thanks." I dropped my bag on the bed. "Hey, what's with those rules Samuels gave me?" Jose stopped in the doorway. "He gave you the list?" "Yeah, come on. Talking dogs. That's a joke, right?" He looked at me for a long second. Something in his face I couldn't place. Pity maybe, or worry. "Just follow them," he said softly. "Trust me." Then he left, leaving me alone in the room. I unpacked slowly, hanging uniforms in the closet, setting my things on the desk. The folded paper stayed in my pocket, and I pulled it out again to read. It was ridiculous. I'd been stationed everywhere. Germany, South Korea, Fort Hood. Each base had its traditions, its ways of breaking in the new guys. This was just more drawn out than most. I tried to nap before my shift, but I couldn't sleep. The wind roared outside, making the walls groan. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed. Normal sounds, but here they seemed louder, sharper, like warnings. At 23:45, I headed to Tower 2. The guard I was relieving, a kid who barely looked old enough to shave, handed me the logbook and almost ran off toward the barracks. The tower was just a raised platform with walls on 3 sides and windows over the perimeter. A space heater hummed in the corner, barely keeping out the cold. I sat in the chair and flipped open the logbook. Standard notes, weather, visibility, nothing unusual. Page after page, the same thing. I made my first entry, 0100 hours. Thompson on duty, all clear. The first hour was quiet. Every 15 minutes, I swept the spotlight along the fence line. Checking for what? Bears. Moose. The briefing had said wildlife, but the fence still felt like too much for animals. Around 1:30, something shifted. The wind stopped dead, leaving a silence so complete it made my ears ring. No bugs, no trees moving, nothing. Just the heater and my own breath. Then I heard it. "Michael." I froze. The voice came from past the fence, maybe 50 yards into the woods. A woman's voice. Familiar. "Michael, honey, is that you?" My mother's voice. Impossible, but I knew it. I stood and leaned at the window. The spotlight beam swept over the trees and shadows. Nothing there. "Michael, please. I'm hurt." I don't know how I got here. My hand started to reach for the door, then stopped. The rules. The first one. Don't answer voices calling from outside after dark. I pulled my hand back. "Baby, please, it's freezing." I think I broke my ankle. I see the lights, but I can't find the gate. Every word was perfect. The accent from Minnesota, the way she called me baby even though I'd asked her to stop when I turned 18. It was her, except it couldn't be. Mom was in Minneapolis, probably asleep in her apartment. She didn't even know I was in Alaska. "Michael, why won't you answer me?" "I'm scared." I gripped the desk so tight my knuckles went white. The voice was moving now, circling the fence, always just out of sight, just beyond the reach of the light. "I know you're there. I can see you in the tower. Please just say something. Let me know you can hear me." My mouth opened. The words "I'm here" sat on the tip of my tongue. I bit them back, remembering Samuel's warning. No exceptions, no questions. The voice went on for another hour, crying, begging, pleading. It knew things no one else could know. The nicknames she used when I was little, the lullaby she sang to me when I couldn't sleep. Personal details that froze me in place. Around 300, the tone shifted. "You're really not going to help me. Your own mother." Now there was anger in the voice. "I raised you better than this. What kind of son leaves his mother to freeze? I stayed silent, staring into the dark. My hands shook as I wrote in the log. 0300 hours. Strange voice outside perimeter. No visuals. Done. The voice changed again, cold and sharp. But I'm not the only one here, Michael. The others aren't as patient as me. A laugh echoed from the woods. Not my mother's laugh, but something else. It started low, then rose higher, splitting until it sounded like many voices at once. The sound circled the tower, near and far, over and over. I gripped my rifle, checking the chamber, though I had no idea what I'd shoot at. The laughter didn't stop until dawn, sometimes warping into words I couldn't catch, sometimes into screams or sobs, sometimes into noises that weren't human at all. When the first light touched the mountains, it cut off mid-sound, ending like a switch had been flipped. I sat trembling, sweat soaking through my shirt even in the freezing air. The forest looked normal again, just trees, mist and shadows. Birds began singing. The wind picked up. At 600, Jose came to relieve me. He saw my face and gave a short nod. First rule. I nodded back, unable to speak. Yeah, that one usually shows up first. He poured coffee from his thermos, handing me a cup. It gets easier. Not better, but easier. What was it? My voice cracked. Don't know. Don't want to know. Just follow the rules and you'll make it through 6 months. I handed over the log and walked back to the barracks on shaky legs. In my room, I pulled out the rules and read them again. This time I read them differently, not as jokes or hazing tricks, but as warnings, survival rules. I memorized every word. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for the fence to stop looking like safety and start feeling like the only thing between me and whatever lived in those trees. I got used to the routine quicker than I thought. Wake at 1400, eat in the mess hall while the day shift finished dinner, equipment checks at 1600, then tower watcher patrol until 0600. The schedule kept us busy, kept us focused, kept us from thinking too much about what waited outside. That night I was on perimeter patrol, walking the fence line, checking for holes or weak spots, making sure all the gates were locked. October had dropped colder, maybe another 10 degrees since I'd arrived. My breath came out in white clouds as I walked, boots crunching on the frozen dirt. Halfway through my second round, I saw him. He stumbled from the tree line about 30 yards from the gate, moving like every step hurt. Even at a distance, I could see his clothes were ripped, jeans torn at the knees, flannel shirt hanging open in the freezing air. He staggered forward, one hand pressed to his ribs, the other waving when he noticed me. Hey, thank God. Hey! His voice carried across the gap, raw and desperate. Please, I need help. I froze, hand moving to my rifle, not aiming, just ready. He kept coming, struggling through the ground between the forest and the fence. As he drew closer, the details stood out. Blood smeared on his shirt, dirt across his face, a cut above his eye bleeding into it. He dropped against the gate, fingers gripping the chain link. Please let me in. I've been lost for 3 days. My friends and I were camping. I got separated. I think a bear attacked. I've been walking forever trying to find someone. His story sounded real. We were remote, but not unreachable. Hikers sometimes passed near, though most stayed on trails to the south. Still, people got lost. It happened. I stepped closer, keeping 6 feet between us. Up close, he looked worse. Lips cracked and bleeding from thirst, dried blood on his shirt that showed the wound wasn't fresh. His hands shook, gripping the wire. "Where's your gear?" I asked. "Dropped it, I think, yesterday." It slowed me down, and I had to keep moving. Something was following me. He leaned his head against the fence, closing his eyes. "Look, I know this is some military area or whatever, but I'm hurt bad. My ribs are broken. Please." I reached for my radio, then paused. Something about him set me off. No, that was just nerves. The man was injured, weak, starving. He needed help, water, care. A decent person couldn't just walk away. My hand went to the gate's lock. Rule 2. The thought froze me in place. Do not allow anyone inside the perimeter who arrives on foot. No exceptions. My hand slipped back from the lock. "I'll radio for help," I said. "Get a medivac sent out here for you." "What?" "No, just open the gate." He shook the fence, panic slipping into his voice. "I'm right here. Just let me in and then call whoever you want. I'm freezing." "I can't do that, but I can get someone here within an hour, maybe less." "An hour?" His voice cracked. "I could be dead in an hour. What's wrong with you?" I lifted my radio, eyes still on him. "Base, this is Thompson on perimeter. I need—" The change came so suddenly I almost didn't catch it. His face twisted. The bones seemed to slide, stretching like soft clay. His jaw grew forward, teeth sharpening. The fingers gripping the wire stretched longer, nails darkening, curving into claws. His eyes. God. They turned yellow, the pupils splitting sideways like a goat's. He snarled, a sound no human throat could make, and jerked the fence so hard the whole section shook. Metal groaned but held. Those inhuman hands shot through the links, swiping for me. I stumbled back, my radio dropping. "Let me in." The voice still sounded partly like his, but layered now, deeper, hungrier. I'm done waiting, done asking nicely. The thing pressed its twisted face against the wire, tongue too long, too purple, slipping through the gaps. It pulled at the chain with awful strength, and I heard metal straining. I swung my rifle off my shoulder, backing another step. "Stop or I'll shoot." It laughed, harsh and broken, like glass grinding. "Yes, fire. Make noise. Bring the others running. Then they'll have to open the gate, won't they? To help their friend." The logic of it hit me cold. If I fired, if I raised alarm, the others would come. They'd see what looked like a hurt civilian at the gate. In the chaos, in the dark, would they remember the rule? Or would training take over? Help first, questions later. The creature seemed to sense my hesitation. It pulled harder, the fence posts groaning. Another minute, and it might actually tear through. Then suddenly it stopped. It let go and stepped back, its ruined features already shifting back toward human. Within seconds, it looked like the same broken hiker again, though something wrong stayed in the eyes. "Smart boy," it said. "You're learning, but you can't guard every gate, every night. Winter's coming. Cold makes us hungrier." It turned toward the woods, walking steady, not limping. Before reaching the trees, it glanced back. "Tell your sergeant his fence won't last forever. Tell him we remember every face that's kept us out." Then it was gone, swallowed in the dark. I stood there for a long time, rifle still raised halfway, staring at the spot where it vanished. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. At last, I picked up my radio and kept moving, checking every foot of fence where it had pulled. The wire was stretched in places, and one post had a crack running through it. I reported the damage, not the truth. How could I? Write that a civilian turned into a monster and threatened attacks? They'd ship me to psych. The next week blurred into routine. I buried myself in work, repairs, counts, anything to keep busy. Sleep came harder, Each time I closed my eyes, I saw that face twisting, those claws reaching through the wire. But the rules had saved me. Keeping them even when instinct screamed not to had kept that thing out. One afternoon while checking the equipment shed, I heard barking. A German shepherd sat outside the fence, tail wagging, tongue hanging from its mouth like a friendly grin. It was a beautiful dog. Thick fur, sharp ears, the kind you'd see on a K-9 recruitment poster. I ignored it, turning back to counting ammo crates. The barking didn't stop, breaking into short whines. After a while, I made the mistake of looking through the window. The dog had moved closer, sitting neatly by the fence, tail thumping when it caught my eye. "Hey there, soldier." I nearly dropped the clipboard. The voice came from the dog, clear as day, though its mouth didn't move like it should have. The words just came. "I know this is strange," it said, "but I really need help. I'm lost." My owner was camping, and I chased a rabbit. Dumb, I know. Been out here for days. Hungry. I turned back to my list, gripping the board tight. Rule 3. If you meet a dog that speaks, do not respond. Keep to your work. "I can see you in there," the dog went on. "I know you hear me." Talking dog, yeah, weird. But I'm not a monster. Just a pet with bad luck. Genetic experiment, if you want the truth. My owner worked in a lab in Anchorage. "Please, just a little food, some water." The voice was gentle, pitiful. It had that same begging tone dogs give with their eyes when they want scraps, but in sound. Every word pushed at the urge to help. I forced myself to count boxes. 12 crates of 5.56, 8 crates of 9 mil. I marked them down. "You're scared. I get it. This place isn't normal. I've seen what hunts out here. At night, they take the weak, the lost. I've been hiding, but I can't much longer. Just let me in. I'll help. Dogs hear what people can't." 6 crates of flares. 4 crates of, "Please." The voice cracked into sobs. "I'm so tired of being alone. Do you know what it's like? Having thoughts, being able to speak, but no one listens. My owner thinks I'm dead. I just want to go home." I finished the ammo and turned to the medical stores. The dog kept talking, its voice chasing me around the shed. Sometimes begging, sometimes just chatting like we were friends. It told me about its owner, Sarah, a scientist who loved hiking, about its favorite toys, about missing warm beds over cold dirt. Every detail was meant to soften me, to make me forget the rule. But dogs didn't just talk, not real dogs, not even changed ones. And this was exactly what the warning had meant. After 20 minutes, the voice shifted. "You're really not going to help me, are you?" The friendly tone was gone now. "That's cold, man. Really cold. What kind of person ignores a dog that can talk? Do you realize how rare I am? How important? Sarah would pay thousands and get me back. Any scientist would. But no, you're just going to leave me out here to starve because of some dumb rule." I finished the inventory and walked to the door. The dog was pacing along the fence back and forth. "Fine, have it your way. But you're making a big mistake. I could have been your ally. I could have warned you about what's coming, because they are coming. You know the ones that look like people? They're just scouts. The real hunters are worse, so much worse." I walked on without looking at it, heading for the main building. The dog followed me from the other side of the fence, staying even with my steps. "You really think that fence will save you? You think those rules mean anything to the old ones? They laugh at you, following your little list like it matters. But when winter comes, when the sun barely rises, that's when they eat." The dog stopped at the corner of the fence, stuck there. As I reached the door, it called out once more. Hey, soldier, when you hear them crying in the walls, remember I could have helped. I would have been a good dog. I went inside and shut the door hard behind me. Through the window, I saw the dog sitting at the fence watching. After a while, it stood, shook itself like any normal dog, and walked back into the woods. That night in the mess hall, I sat across from Jose while we pushed around rehydrated eggs. He took one look at my face and lifted an eyebrow. Which rule this time? 3. He nodded, chewing slowly. The dog. Yeah, that one's tough. Sounds so real, doesn't it? So normal except for the obvious. What are they? I asked softly. These things. What do they want? Jose poked at his food. Does it matter? They're outside. We're inside. The rules keep it that way. That's all that counts. But I saw in his eyes that he'd asked himself the same thing, that he'd lain awake wondering what kind of world this really was. A place where creatures wore human faces and dogs spoke in human voices. Where mothers' voices called from the dark and things that looked like lost hikers tore at fences with unnatural strength. We finished eating without talking. Outside, the wind howled louder, rattling the glass. Somewhere far off, something cried out. Maybe a wolf. Maybe not. I didn't want to know anymore. I just wanted to survive 6 months here without losing my mind. I couldn't stop checking the locks. After the dog, after that thing pretending to be someone's pet, I built a habit that felt almost holy. Door handle 3 times before bed. Deadbolt twice. Then again just to be sure. Jose had caught me once and only nodded. No words needed. We all had our ways of handling it. The paranoia grew little by little. During my watch, I'd count the rules on my fingers, like a child learning to add. 1, don't answer voices. 2, no one enters on foot. 3, ignore talking animals. 4, lock the door before midnight. 5, don't go after screams. Simple, direct, life-saving. I started carrying a notebook, writing down anything strange. Not for reports, just for myself. Noises in the night, sudden drops in temperature, fence sections that seemed weaker. Maybe if I tracked it, I could see a pattern. Maybe it would help. But it didn't. 3 days after the dog, Sergeant Samuel sent me to do full maintenance on the equipment shed. Every piece of gear had to be checked, cleaned, and logged before winter locked us in. I spent 14 hours tearing apart generators, cleaning fuel lines, testing old backup batteries. My hands were black with grease, my back stiff and aching. Around 10 o'clock, Martinez brought me coffee. You look awful, Mike. I feel worse. I rubbed sweat from my forehead, smearing grease. How many of these old machines do we have? Too many. But they're the only reason the lights stay on when the main grid cuts. And trust me, you don't want to be here in the dark. By the time I was done, my head felt like mud. My joints ached. My eyes stung from the harsh light and fumes. I dragged myself back to quarters sometime after 2200, barely able to stay upright. My room looked like heaven itself. Just that thin mattress and itchy wool blanket. I kicked off my boots, didn't even line them up like usual. Peeled off my grease-stained uniform and dropped it where it fell. The pillow was cool on my face as I collapsed. Sleep took me before another thought formed. The cold woke me, not the usual bite of Alaska's nights, but something sharper. The kind of cold inside a freezer that hasn't been opened in years. My breath came out white, and frost gathered on the wool blanket. I opened my eyes into darkness. The glowing red numbers on my alarm clock showed 12:17 a.m. Something shifted in the corner of my eye. My whole body went stiff. That old part of the brain screaming danger before I could even think. Slowly, against every instinct telling me to shut my eyes and fake sleep, I turned my head. It was standing by my desk, unmoving. It had to hunch a little under the 8-foot ceiling, maybe 7 feet tall, with limbs stretched too long, like pulled rubber. Skin so pale it seemed to shine faintly in the dark. Its arms hung low, fingers reaching past where knees should be, each finger bent at wrong angles. Too many joints. The face had no eyes, just smooth flesh where they should have been. Not scarred, not sewn, just blank skin from forehead to cheekbones. Its mouth was a thin slit, hardly there until it opened. You forgot. The whisper filled the room, quieter than breathing, yet it came from everywhere at once. The walls, the ceiling, inside my head. I couldn't move. My muscles locked tight. Fight or flight had failed. I froze. The thing tilted its head, watching me with whatever sense it had in place of eyes. Rule 4, it whispered again. Such a small thing. Turn a handle, push a bolt. But you were tired, so very tired. It stepped closer and the floorboards groaned. Its fingers slid across the edge of my desk, leaving frost wherever they touched. Do you know what usually happens when someone forgets? It tilted its head the other way, bird-like. Want me to tell you? My throat tried to work, but no sound came. The creature began circling my bed, each step slow, silent, too careful for something that size. First, they take the little things, childhood memories, the taste of your mother's food, the name of your first pet. It stopped at my bed's foot. You don't notice at first. The brain covers the gaps, gives reasons. Stress, they'll say, or fatigue. It kept walking, now on my other side. The smell hit me, like a basement drowned and left to rot. Then it's the faces. Your sister becomes a stranger. Your best friend looks wrong when you're not watching. You know it's wrong, but the words to say it never form. Its long fingers dragged along my footlocker, leaving frost marks across the plastic. The doctors call it Capgras syndrome. They give you pills, but they don't help. It finished its circle and stood at the desk again. In the dark, its pale shape seemed to glow faintly, like bad light. Finally, when you're emptied out, when everything human in you is gone, that's when they take you. You still walk, still talk, but you're theirs. No one notices, because outside you still look the same. It bent close, eyeless face near mine. The air grew so cold my teeth rattled. But I'm not like them. I remember before this place, when it was just trees and snow, before your kind made fences and rules. Its whisper almost sounded sad. I'm curious about you, about why you cling to rules so tightly, except tonight. My voice scraped out at last. I was tired, I just forgot. Yes, it said, standing tall again, head brushing the ceiling. Exhaustion, such a human flaw, but maybe a gift. The others, the hungry ones, would already be wearing your memories like a stolen coat. I only wanted to see. See what? Fear. That thin mouth curved into something like a smile. Real fear. It's been so long since I felt it myself. I wanted to remember. The creature moved back toward the corner, its long limbs folding and bending in ways that hurt to watch. Lock your door, Michael Thompson, every night, without fail. The next one who visits won't share my nostalgia. It stepped backward into the wall itself. No door, no window, just gone. The drywall showed no trace of it. The frost on my desk and footlocker lingered a few seconds, then turned to mist. The room warmed so fast my skin tingled. I sat frozen, blanket up to my chin like a child hiding from monsters. Except these didn't hide under beds. They walked through walls, whispered in the dark, and remembered when the world was still wild. My clock read 12:34 a.m., 17 minutes. The whole thing had lasted 17 minutes that felt endless. Moving like an old man, I got up and touched the door. My hands shook. Once, twice, 3 times. The deadbolt slid into place with a heavy click. I leaned against the door, testing it, solid, firm, following the rules. I dragged my chair under the handle just to be sure. Then I sat on my bed, back pressed to the wall, waiting for daylight. Sleep wasn't possible. Every shadow might hide pale arms. Every faint sound might be a whisper. My notebook lay open on the desk, but what words could describe it? Something ancient standing in your room, talking about carving away your identity until you're nothing but a shell. At 600, when thin sunlight came through the window, I put on yesterday's uniform and went for coffee. My hands still trembled, though not so much in the mess hall. A few soldiers greeted me like nothing was wrong, as if things hadn't walked through walls at night. I never forgot again, not once in the months that followed. Even when I was dead tired, fighting to keep my eyes open, I stood at my door and went through the ritual. Handle 3 times, deadbolt twice, once more to be certain. The frost marks on my desk never fully faded. Sometimes I'd trace them with a fingertip, remembering, asking myself what might have happened if I'd broken another rule. If I'd answered my mother's voice that first night, if I'd opened the gate for the injured hiker, if I'd spoken to the dog. The creature had called my mistake a blessing, said the others would have been worse. I believed it. In a place where mothers called from the dark and dogs spoke with human words, I'd take 17 minutes of terror over whatever else waited. Rule 4 became my prayer. Lock your door before midnight. Never open it again until dawn. Such a small thing. Turn a handle, slide a bolt. But after that night, I never forgot again. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of checking locks over and over, counting rules and jumping at every shadow. My sleep wasn't real sleep, just 4 hours of tossing and turning that left me feeling half awake. The memory of that pale thing in my room faded from sharp terror into a dull bruise, only hurting when I thought about it too hard. Some nights I even made it until morning without waking up covered in sweat. But that night was not the same. The screaming tore me awake, high, sharp, and desperate, a woman's voice full of pure panic. I rolled out of bed, hitting the floor hard, training from basic taking over before my brain could even catch up. Help me! Oh God, somebody help me! Her voice echoed down the corridor, bouncing off the walls, sounding like it came from everywhere at once. East Wing maybe, or the equipment shed. The way sound traveled in those prefab buildings made it impossible to be sure. All I knew was someone was in danger, right now. I shoved on my boots, didn't even bother with socks, and grabbed my rifle off its mount. I chambered around, heart pounding. My uniform shirt was on the chair. No time. Just my undershirt and pants would have to do. Please, he's trying to kill me. Someone. Anyone. Her voice cracked on the last word, breaking into sobs that sent chills down my back. I'd heard pain before in training, in emergencies, but this was different. This was the sound of someone who knew death was seconds away. I slammed through my door at a run, rifle low and ready. The hallway stretched both ways, glowing under those harsh fluorescent lights that never reached the corners. Empty. Still the screaming echoed, louder now that I was out of my room. Where the hell was everyone? The woman's voice rose higher, shrieking so sharp it made my teeth ache. 12 soldiers on base, and I was the only one here? I started toward the east wing, convinced the sound came from that way. A door creaked open behind me. I spun fast, rifle up. "Mike, stop!" Jose stood in his doorway in boxers and a faded marine shirt, hair sticking out everywhere, but his eyes sharp and alert. His rifle hung loose in his hand. "Someone's in trouble," I said, voice harsher than I meant. "We need to go." He stepped into the hall, right into my path. "We don't... Help me, please. He's coming." The screaming sliced through the air again, bouncing off the walls. Jose didn't flinch, didn't even look, just stood there like this was nothing. "Move!" I snapped, trying to step around him. He shifted with me, still blocking. "Jose, I'm serious. Someone needs..." "Rule 5. His voice cut clean through the next wail. "When you hear screaming in the night, do not investigate." "I don't care about the rules," I shot back. But even as I said it, my hands gripped the rifle tighter. The rules, always the rules. They'd saved me from my mother's voice, from the hiker at the gate, from the dog that talked. But this felt different, real, human. Someone alive was out there while we argued half-dressed. "Get away from me!" "No!" A crash echoed. Glass breaking, furniture slamming over. The screams turned wet, choked, like someone was drowning in their own blood. I shoved at Jose, tried to push past, but for someone so thin he was stronger than he looked. His hand clamped my shoulder and shoved me back. Then he planted himself square in the middle of the hallway. "You go out there, you don't come back." His voice wasn't angry, just steady, like a fact. "Trust me? How can you just stand there?" My voice cracked. I sounded small, scared, exactly how I felt. "She's dying." "She's not dying." Jose let his weapon hang loose from its sling. Calm, certain. "Come on, my room. Now I'm not going..." "Mike." He used the same hard tone Samuels had used that first day, the one that left no room for questions. "My room." Now the screams outside changed again. More voices now, mixing together in a twisted chorus that pressed against my eardrums from the inside. The same woman's voice layered over itself, dozens of her, all crying out in pain. My stomach turned. I let Jose guide me into his quarters. He shut the door, locked it, turned the handle twice, slid the deadbolt. His room was the same as mine, only with personal touches. Photos taped on the wall, a small cross over the bed, a half-empty whiskey bottle on the desk. "Sit." He pointed at the chair. I stayed standing, rifle clutched in my hands. Jose shrugged, sat down on his bed, weapon laid across his lap. "First time." "First time what?" The screaming still went on outside, muffled through the walls but terrible to hear. The screamers. Jose rubbed his face with both hands. "Usually starts around the second month." "You're right on time, somebody, anybody, please." I flinched, but Jose didn't even blink. He had heard this before, many times, and it showed in how calm he was. 2 years, he said quietly. "I've been here 2 years. Heard it maybe 30, 40 times. Stopped counting, and you've never once." The word hung heavy. "My 3rd week, same as you. Heard someone screaming, grabbed my weapon, ran to help, made it halfway to the equipment shed before Corporal Davies tackled me and dragged me back inside. Saved my life." The sound outside shifted, now coming from above us somehow. But I knew the roof was empty, no way up there, and the hatch was locked from inside. "Davies rotated out 4 months later," Jose continued. "But before he left, he told me about the ones who didn't listen. Private Morrison, 6 months before I got here. Heard screaming from the mess hall, went to check. In the morning, they found his rifle. Safety off, full mag, but no Morrison. No blood, no fight, just gone. Maybe he deserted, I muttered, though even I didn't believe it. Alaska, winter, no vehicle. Jose shook his head. Then there was Specialist Chen, year and a half ago. Same thing. Screaming from the perimeter, he radioed that he was going to check it. That was the last word anyone got. Searchers found his boot prints heading toward the tree line. They ended 20 feet out, just stopped mid-step. Like he disappeared outside, the woman's voice climbed higher than humanly possible, then split into 3 screams at once, coming from above, below, and the east. All the same voice, all the same pain. Who's doing this to me? I put my rifle down, gripping the desk until my hands turned white. Everything in me screamed to act, to help, but Jose's words kept me frozen. Morrison, Chen, gone. How long does it go on? I asked. Hour, sometimes 2. He reached for the whiskey bottle. Want some? I shook my head. The screams kept going, rhythmic now, rising and falling, begging, sobbing, breaking apart in pain. Why doesn't anyone else come out? I asked. Why aren't they here? They know the rule. Jose took a long drink from the bottle. They've been here long enough. They'll just lie there in their bunks, pillows on their heads, waiting it out. Help me! Help me! Help me! The words blurred together into a single cry. I wanted to cover my ears, but it felt wrong, like giving up. Slowly I realized there was no whoever out there, just something that wore a voice like a mask. Talk to me, I said. Anything. Just talk. Jose nodded. My sister's getting married next month. December wedding. Crazy, right? Who marries in December? But she says the church looks perfect with Christmas decorations. He kept going, talking about dresses, food, music, ordinary things, real things. His words felt like ropes tying us to reality, while the screaming outside twisted into something unreal. The voices multiplied, a dozen now, maybe more. All the same woman but at different ages. A child screaming for her mother, a teenager begging for help, an old woman croaking please, a lifetime of pain all at once. I held tighter to the desk. Jose just kept talking, calm and steady, like we were back in the mess hall instead of hiding for something that wanted us gone. Then it stopped, not fading, cut off. Silence slammed into the room, only the hum of the heater in our breathing. I checked my watch. 0147. We'd been in his room for 53 minutes. Is it over? Wait. Jose raised a hand. And then, one last scream, right outside his door. So close I heard the breath before it. The knob rattled. Why won't you help me? The voice was broken now. I can hear you in there. 2 soldiers, armed, strong. Why won't you help me? Neither of us moved. The knob rattled harder. Then the voice shifted, twisting, deeper, angry. Fine. Let me die. But I won't be the last. I won't even be the worst footsteps followed in the hall, but not walking, wet, slapping sounds like raw meat on tile. They grew fainter, then vanished. 5 minutes of silence passed before Jose finally lowered his shoulders. Now it's over. My legs trembled as I stood, rifle feeling twice as heavy in my hands. Every soldier who tried to help. Gone, Jose finished. He capped the bottle. No bodies, no answers, just gone. The brass has to know. But what can they do? Shut down the base? Admit that something out here takes anyone who breaks the rules? Number. We just let them scream. We follow the rules. He stood, checked his rifle like always. That's how we get home. It's the only way. I walked toward the door, then hesitated. The voice. Is it always the same? No, he shook his head. Sometimes men, sometimes children. Once I heard my mother's voice. Perfect match. Accent and all. Screaming like someone was killing her. His voice went flat. That was a bad night. I understood. If that thing had used my mother's voice instead of calling, I shivered. Thanks, I said, for stopping me. Pass it on. Jose unlocked his door. Deadbolt once, handle twice, reverse order. When the next new guy shows up, you stop him. That's how it works. I stepped out into the hallway. Everything looked normal. No blood, no signs of a fight. No proof that someone had been screaming for their life just minutes earlier. But there was a smell, faint and already fading, like copper mixed with ozone and something else. Something living but wrong. Mike. I turned. Jose stood in his doorway, looking far older than 29. Check your locks, he said. Every night, no exceptions. And when you hear screaming again, and you will, remember, whatever makes those sounds isn't human. Never was. The ones who forget that don't make it home. I nodded and went back to my quarters. 3 more months. 3 more months of following rules. Of monsters outside. Of things that cried with voices too close to people I once loved. But I'd make it. I'd follow every rule no matter what my instincts told me. No matter how real the cry sounded, because Jose was right. The only way to survive was to remember nothing here was what it looked like. Mercy would kill you. Compassion could kill you. Sometimes the most human thing you could do was nothing at all. I locked my door, handle 3 times, deadbolt twice, once again for safety, and sat on my bed with my rifle across my lap. I knew I wouldn't sleep. The wind outside clawed at the mountains, and every gust carried the sound of someone begging for help. 3 more months. 3 months blurred by in routines and watchfulness. Every rule followed. Every night survived. I folded my last uniform and packed it into my duffel, my movements automatic after years of service. My room looked the same as it had on day 1. Bare walls, standard furniture, a single window with the same view of fence and forest. Only the faint frost stains on my desk and the worn spot in the floor by the door, where I checked the lock each night, showed I had lived here at all. The transport was due in 2 hours. Just 2 hours and I could leave this behind. Pretend it had been only another posting, another job completed. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, quick and eager, the kind only new arrivals made. The others had long ago learned to move carefully, saving strength for when it mattered. The steps stopped at my door. Specialist Thompson. The voice was young, bright. I'm Private Brandon Kelly. Sergeant Samuels said you'd show me around before you rotate out. I opened the door and found a kid who looked barely out of training. Bright green eyes, a spotless uniform still creased from packaging, boots polished like glass. He stood straight at parade rest. Just Mike, I said, stepping aside. You can drop the formalities. Brandon eased a little, though the energy stayed in him as he glanced around the bare room. Man, they weren't kidding about remote. That helicopter ride was insane. Nothing but mountains and trees forever. Yeah. I pulled out my notebook, the one where I had tracked strange events. Temperature drops, unexplained noises, fence damage that fixed itself overnight. Pages filled with things no one would believe, things he couldn't learn from words. Only time would teach him. I turned to a blank page and began to write. The rules came without effort, carved into me by months of repetition. 1. Do not answer voices outside the fence after dark, no matter who they claim to be. Brandon leaned over my shoulder, curious. What's that? Standing orders for guard duty, I said. I kept writing, making every line plain. No space for mistakes. 2. Do not allow anyone in on foot, no matter what they look like or say. Brandon nodded. Pretty standard for a secure post. I didn't answer. 3. If you see a dog or any animal that talks, ignore it. Keep doing your job. Brandon laughed. Real laughter that bounced off the walls. Okay, now I know you're messing with me. Talking dogs? That's hazing, right? I finished the last 2 rules in silence. 4. Lock your door before midnight every night. Don't open it until morning. 5. If you hear screaming at night, do not investigate. Stay where you are and call it in. I tore the page free and gave it to him. Brandon looked at it with that same grin, shaking his head like it was a joke. Come on, man. Talking animals. Voices in the dark? I get it. FNG initiation. He folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket without care. But really, what's this place about? I wanted to shake him, to make him see that those words weren't a prank, that I had heard my dead mother calling to me from the dark, that I had seen a man's face split and change into something not human, that I had once lain paralyzed while a pale thing with no eyes walked in circles around my bed, whispering about how my mind could be hollowed out and worn like clothes. Instead, I zipped my duffel. Follow the rules. That's all you need to know. Brandon grinned wider, certain he was in on the joke now. Follow the rules. Got it. I shouldered my bag and looked once more at the bare room. 6 months of my life, stripped down to standard walls and furniture. 6 months of learning that the world was darker than I ever believed, full of voices and faces that were not what they seemed. Brandon followed me, chattering about his hometown, his training, his excitement at his first real assignment. The same eagerness I'd carried stepping off that helicopter in October, before I knew what hunted in the shadows, before I knew why Samuels had that distant, hollow stare. We walked toward the landing pad, Brandon asking about schedules, gear checks, food, normal worries for a normal job. I gave him simple answers, just enough to keep him satisfied. The rest he'd learn on his own. Likely on his very first night on tower duty, when the wind dropped and a voice whispered his name from the dark beyond the fence. The helicopter came into view over the tree line, blades pounding through the cold air. I had never been so glad to hear that noise. Any advice? Brandon asked as we waited for it to land. You know, veteran to rookie. I looked at him, really looked, and saw myself 6 months earlier, confident, doubtful, certain that training had prepared me for anything. No words could break through that certainty. He would have to learn the same way we all had. Lock your door, I said at last. Every night, no matter how tired you are. He laughed again, but the sound wavered at the end when he caught something in my face. That's really important to you guys, huh? The whole rules thing. You have no idea. The helicopter touched down and the crew chief waved me forward. I climbed inside without looking back, settling into the web seat as the rotors kicked harder. Through the window, I saw Brandon shield his eyes from the blast, already turning back toward the buildings, toward what would be his home for the next half year. The outpost shrank below us as we rose higher. 12 gray buildings inside a fence that could never keep out what really mattered. Towers climbing toward the clouds. And beyond the wire, endless forests where old things waited. I understood now why no one stayed longer than 6 months. Why outside contact was limited. Why reports never spoke of the truth. Some things couldn't be explained in writing, couldn't be broken into files and passed around by people who had never heard their mother's voice drifting from empty woods. Some truths cost more than money or hours. The helicopter turned south, carrying me back to where dogs didn't speak, where injured hikers were only injured hikers, where locks meant keeping thieves out, not monsters, where screams in the night meant someone really needed help. Brandon would face his first test soon, maybe tonight, maybe later. He would hear something that should not exist and would have to choose between training and those 5 simple rules. A part of me hoped he would remember what I'd told him, that something inside him would hesitate before opening a door or answering a call. But I knew better. He would do what I had done: doubt, question, nearly die, and then understand that the rules weren't traditions, weren't hazing, weren't optional. They were survival. The outpost vanished behind mountains and distance. I shut my eyes and tried not to imagine Brandon alone on the tower, scanning the dark when the wind suddenly stilled and a voice he trusted called his name. He had the rules. That was all I could give him. The helicopter carried me south over miles of frozen wilderness, towards cities, crowds, and ordinary problems. But I knew I would never truly leave that place. Every time I locked a door, I would check it 3 times. Every bark of a dog would make me pause, listening for words. Every scream in the night would freeze me, counting to 5, remembering. Some deployments left you the same. Others left scars no report or test would ever show. Scars you carried inside where no one else could see. 6 months at the outpost had taught me the world was stranger and more dangerous than I had ever believed. That survival sometimes meant refusing every instinct that made you human. That there were things in the dark that knew our names and wore the voices of people we loved. Brandon would learn all of this, or he wouldn't. And then in 6 months, another new face would arrive, handed a list of rules from Jose or whoever else was left alive. The cycle would keep going. It had to. Because out there in those mountains, past the fence and the thin idea of safety, things waited for the one person who forgot to lock their door.